Welcome to Your Iconic Image. If you want to take control of your image and be a power player in your space, then this is the show for you. Here we will arm you with tools and information to help you grow your brand on purpose. I'm your host, Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Now let's dive into today's episode. Radon Stancil is a best-selling author and the founder of Peace of Mind Wealth Management, a firm committed to helping individuals retire with excellence. He is also the co-host of the podcast, Secure Your Retirement. Welcome, Radon.
Thank you so much. Glad to be on here.
So here's the thing. People go out, they tell us, build a brand, build a business, make money, but nobody ever tells us what to do with it. So start us off. What are some mistakes you see people make when they are starting to make money?
Well, I think, first of all, for a lot of folks that are either, somebody who's, say, self-employed, whether you're a small or large company, doesn't matter. We get so focused in trying to say things like, I'm just going to reinvest in the company. I'm going to reinvest all my profits there because that's where I'm going to make the most. And I agree with that. I'm a small business myself, so I understand that mentality. I will tell you, though, that I think that in addition to that, you've kind of got to always make sure you're setting aside something for yourself, for your own savings. And if you don't do that, you could use that psychological thing of saying, I'm just reinvesting in my company, I'm reinvesting in growth and all that kind of stuff. But you could get down the road and all you did now is have a big company. And unless you can sell it and get something back out of it, it really is not going to help you for retirement. So we talk a lot with folks, and I even to myself say, okay, you've got to make sure that you have a plan in place that says, I'm going to have money to the side. Now, we always talk about that depending upon where you are at in your positive cash flow, so to speak. Always do the basics. Don't try to get super fancy with it. You need to have a cash reserve. I'll tell you mine. As a small business owner, I always felt like if I could get to a point where I had at least 6 months at the bare minimum of savings. And now the reason why I thought that way is I know as a small business that cash flow sometimes can suffer. So I needed to have a scenario where I could have my current lifestyle, but I might have to pull a month or two. And I didn't want to be stressed as to whether or not how I was going to operate in the business. So I think at least 6 months of your normal earnings in a liquid savings account. Then once I got there, then now the next step is, okay, well, now what do I put my money into? I will tell you the number one thing, if you're not making a tremendous amount of money, you can qualify to put money into a Roth IRA. The reason why that's such an advantageous place is that the money, when it grows tax-free. But again, I always think like a small business owner, I also love liquidity. So with a Roth IRA, if I put my money in a Roth, I then can pull the money right back out. I just can't touch the growth. So let's just use numbers. I put $1,000 into a Roth. It grows to 2,000. The 1,000 I put in, I can pull out without penalty. The 1,000 of growth, I have to wait for at least 5 years or until I'm 59 and a half, whichever one of those is longer. So that's my only stipulation. So it kind of allows me to have an extra savings account that's growing tax free, but then I can pull the money back out. So I say, take the basics, build that build that savings plan, 6 months, then go start using things like a Roth. You can also build your own, you can have, even if you're a single, what we call a solopreneur, you can actually have a 401k as an individual that allows you to put in money pre-tax into that. So I think you've got to have that put together. And I know the hurdles. Mentally, I did not like the idea of a 401k. And the reason why is in my head, I thought, well, I'm a small business. I might need capital. And if I go put money over in my 401k and I need that capital, I'm going to pay a penalty to get it back out. So I did my order the way I just described to you. I wanted to make sure I had enough savings outside that was liquid. Then I started funding other vehicles that were not going to give me that liquidity.
Is it wise for us? First, let me ask you this. No matter where we are in the grand scheme of things, is it wise for us to be an LLC or a S Corp or any of those kinds of things as opposed to just a DBA?
So I have to do a little disclosure on that. I'm not an attorney.
Right.
I'm not a CPA.
Yeah.
So
I'm talking strictly from a finance standpoint.
Yeah. So No, from a finance standpoint, there's no advantage. The liability, now there is one on that S corporation. There is an advantage because you can pay yourself an income that you would pay the FICA taxes on, Social Security, Medicare, that kind of stuff. And then you can take a distribution or a dividend on the remaining part and not pay some of that tax. So there is a little advantage there, but the other stuff is really what we call a pass through. It doesn't matter from a tax perspective. The limited liability company really helps us on a liability issue, meaning they can sue my corporation. They can't sue me as an individual. So that really is what the purpose of that is more about liability than it is taxes. Taxes are not going to really be treated any different.
Okay. So let's say we decide we're going to be an LLC, and is it wise for us to separate our finances and have some that are strictly assigned to the LLC and some that are assigned to us personally?
I don't think so. From my perspective, I mean, now I have a mentality thing about that. This is just my personal mentality. I never wanted to have to put money back into the company. So I never took distributions. I don't think you should take distributions. It's a cycle, the psyche thing. If I have to go take money out of my personal savings and put it back in the company, I feel like I'm very negative. So my mentality is leave enough of operating capital in your corporation, in your corporate account, so that you don't have to pull from savings. So even if that meant to me, I felt like I was making less money because I didn't pull it out, I didn't care. I never wanted to have to go back into savings and put it back into the company. It just would bother my brain. And so I kept a larger amount of money in my company checking account so that I could not have to ever do that. And I always, now on the way I operate on the business side, and I think that this is, things I've learned, things I've been taught, is I always make sure I've got at least 3 months of operating capital in my corporate account. So if I have employees, if you've got an employee or you're paying yourself even, at least 3 months of operating. So if you have rent, if you have vendors, if you have anything like that, I always say at least have 3 months in there so that you're not going month by month hoping that I can cover the bills. And, and that may take a while. I mean, I didn't live that way the whole time, but after you can get your cash flow in a place, so if you can strive for that, it just makes your life a lot better.
So is that,
not worried.
Is that in addition to, or is that separate from the 6 months that you had mentioned earlier about expenses?
For me, I always think that should be a separate thing. Okay. I have my personal bills, which is things I'm paying, my house, my personal issues, my personal things that I want to live on. That is personal. And then there's the company. The company has to operate. And I need to have, so for me and my thinking, as I'd have 3 months of operating capital to run the company. Now, part of that might be paying me. A part of that number might be my actual income. But then I've got my personal things that I write that are, whether that's my house payment, my credit cards, all that kind of stuff. There, I need 6 months, because here's the way it works when you're a small business owner. I talk about having 3 months of capital over here in the business. Well, if push comes to shove, typically a small business owner will pay everybody but themselves, right? So you'll say, I got to pay everybody else. I got to pay my employees. I got to pay my rent. So what if you had to go 2 months in that number because of bad scenario, COVID, okay, whatever it might be, I can't pay myself, but I now I have my personal savings that says, all right, I can survive a couple of months without getting paid. So I cut myself out of the company program, but I still have my personal savings. Then maybe I hit a couple of big deals over in the company side. I'm able to replenish my couple of months that I depleted on the other side. So that's the juggling act of a small business owner, or any business owner, is that sometimes you have to sacrifice, but you've got the big picture in your head that goes, oh, but I know I'm going to get better, or I'm going to get more going, and it will pay me back.
So at what point is it wise to hire an advisor?
So I think anytime we're going to, okay, so there's a couple of different scenarios there. Number one, I think everybody needs an advisor. Okay, now what I mean by that is I'm a financial advisor, but I still need advisors. So I have business coaches. Every single year, I make it a rule that I have to have somebody in my life that's telling me what I need to do better. Okay, how to be able to construct things, how to be, simple things. I have a CPA. I have an estate planning attorney. So I have all the things I'm telling anybody else to have. And I have people in my life that I pay every single year to help me make good decisions around operating my business and how to operate in the most effective way. Other, in all essence, financial advisors that I go to say, hey, how can I do better in my business? Because obviously, if I talk to 10 different people, I'm going to learn something from them. So I'm a part of, mastermind groups. I'm a part of coaching programs. I'm every year have a rule. I have to be in at least 2 or 3 of those things to make sure I'm doing things correctly. So that to me is an advisor. Now, a financial advisor can help you work along with your CPA to set things up. We talk about that single 401k. You got to have that set up somewhere. You then need to have the money managed. And if that's not what you do, then I don't think you need to be doing it. If that's not what your thing is, because now you're trying to learn something that you don't know. Mm-hmm. My pet peeve inside here in my office is, I love technology. I love those things, but I outsource that to somebody else to run for me because I don't want to spend 3 days trying to figure it out and taking away from what I already know and spending that time. So I think you have an advisor so you can concentrate on what you know how to do best.
And is that at any point in our business or as soon as we start to make any kind of an income, or do we need to be at a certain level?
Well, again, I think that comes back to your, if you're obviously strapped for cash, it's going to be very difficult for you to start talking about that. But if you've said, hey, I'm actually being able to hit my goals, I'm starting to save money every month. How do I structure this? What's the best way to lay this out? And to help get a plan, I think that, I say sooner than later, because now you're going to start to have those priorities and you're going to start to have an infrastructure that says, okay, I'm paying myself, I'm saving for myself, I'm doing all those things. So to some degree, yes, I would say as soon as you can possibly do it, you want to do it.
So is it ever too early to be thinking about retirement?
Well, again, for the most part, my brain right now, as I'm talking to a small business owner, many times small business owners don't really have necessarily a retirement goal. They've got much more of a time goal. And so for me, I don't really look at things and go, I need to get to 65 because I want to quit this corporate world and go retire. I look at it and go, well, I want to get to a point where I don't have to come into the office every day. I want to get down to a 2-day work week or to maybe a 24-hour work week, whatever that is. And I'm going to do some of that from here and some of that from remote, whatever that might be. That's my goal. And I want to hit that much earlier than 65. And so, but then I don't really see a reason. By the time I get to 65, unless I've, got a brain issue, it's the easiest life of my business career because I have all the things that I've built all those years. And so unless I sell and somebody comes in and buys me, I don't really have a retirement goal from the traditional retirement goal. Now, if you've got a retirement goal and say, yeah, I'm building this, I want to retire, then no, you all think about retirement as soon as you can think about retirement or whatever your goal is. If your goal is to say, look, I want to sell this business, or my goal is I want to get a team in place so I'm not the needed person there every single day, then think that way. Whatever your goal is, people have different goals. I got a brother who has a small business that's a heating and air conditioning business. Now, he is now 45 years old, and he goes, I don't want to crawl under houses and do that for the rest of my life. So he's got a different scenario than I have. So now his might be, I want to get to a point where I have other people that crawl under the houses and do that part. I just don't want to do that part. Mm-hmm. So, I think everybody has to think about what is their goal because it may be different.
Is there any difference between, let's say, you're starting this journey at 20 versus starting it at 30 versus starting it at 50? Would you advise people more aggressively, or it depends?
So just think about time and compound effect. If a person starts at 20 and they go to 65, they can save $1 million by just, with some growth and a very small amount of money. I'm talking $100 or so a month, and they can do it over that time. Now, the longer we wait before we start doing it, we have to save a much larger amount of money in order to catch up. Now, there could be argument there that could be valid argument. The one argument says, yeah, but if I start a business when I'm 20 and I put everything into the business, by the time I'm 40, I might be making 10 times more than with somebody else who did a traditional job. That might happen. But no, I say the earlier you can save, the better. I have a son who's 18 years old, and he's doing a fantastic job of saving, and he's really into actually this investment side of things. And so he's really big about that. If he continues that path, I mean, it just makes everything much easier the longer he goes.
Is there a minimum that we should have for retirement, or is there some kind of a calculator that we can use to give us an idea of what we would need?
So there's lots of online calculators. You just have to be careful about how you're calculating it. So many of the calculators say, and I'll just use some rough numbers. If you're making $100,000 today in today's dollars, it'll say, all right, let's assume that you need $100,000 in retirement. That may not be the case. It just might be that you're actually making 100,000. The calculators always use what your current income and assumes that's what you're going to need in retirement. That's a bad calculation, because you might be making 100,000 and saving 50. So you don't need $100,000 a year in retirement. I will say our average client today, who's been a good saver, lives on between $5,000 and $8,000 a month net. So after taxes. So that means they need to make about $80,000 of before tax money to generate what they need after tax. So we have to do the calculation that way, not based on what their income was before, because some of these folks were making $300,000 a year before. Well, if I said you need $300,000 a year, you've got to have a humongous amount of money in order to generate $300,000 in retirement. They don't need that. So first of all, determine what you think your income is going to be, needs are going to be in retirement. That's going to be very difficult to do if you're 20 and 30. So don't sweat that. The big thing you want to do is say, all right, if I want to retire, what would I dream out that I would want? So let's just say you said, I want my house paid off. I obviously don't want to have any, alternative debt. I don't want that. I want to make, everything paid off, so to speak. That makes it much easier. Then you say, okay, how much do I want then? If everything is paid off, how much do I want coming in the door in today's dollars? It's really important to think about today's dollars, because if you're 25, 30, 40, whatever it is, let's just use 40, because 40 is an easy mathematical equation. If I'm 40 and I'm going to retire when I'm 65, 25 years later, if I said in today's dollars that I need, let's just go with my average, $8,000 a month, 5 to 8,000. So I'm going to use 8. By the time I'm 65, because of inflation, that's going to be closer to $16,000 a month to live like I'm living today on 8,000. So I have to kind of do that math. But no, you could build a spreadsheet, or you can use a calculator. You can talk to a financial advisor, but there are online calculators that you can use to kind of help you think about that math. But the big thing is save as much as you can save, and try to have goals there that says, I'm going to pay myself first. Pay myself first means I'm going to save first. And the older you get, the higher that percentage needs to be.
So is there ever a point where you just don't simply make enough to do these things? Let's say you're 40 and your income is, I don't know, $70,000 a year, and you've got a family. Are there still things that you can do?
So there's a blunt answer to this. And it's usually, now there are cases, I mean, I'm not saying, I know there's people in all over the world, but here in the United States who live on a very low amount of money. But let's just talk a person who's got a decent job, using your number, even $70,000. It always comes down to overspending more than it does whether or not you can afford it. So yeah, if I'm making 75,000 and I'm trying to live in the biggest house I can possibly afford, but based on whatever they tell me I can afford for mortgage, and I want a new car, and I want to have every single thing I want in the house, meaning I want all the, knickknacks, I want all the technology. I'm going to burn through every bit of my money. But to say that I make only 75,000, I can't afford to save, you're not being honest with yourself. You basically are spending too much money.
Interesting.
So, I know that's a hard truth, because you're going, well, yeah, it's not fair because these folks over here get to have this. Well, they make more money, or they don't care about saving for retirement. Whatever your story is, don't use the excuse, I don't make enough money. I've got clients, by the way, that are millionaires, meaning they have got more than $1 million, and they are teachers, which means they live most of their life, for the two of them, earning around $35,000 to $40,000 each. I actually have one client that had 3 children. I met him quite a few years ago, had 3 children, a wife who did not work. He was a school teacher. I think at the time he made about $42,000 a year, and they saved money every single month. Now you might go, how in the world? And we're talking within the last decade that I had this in front of me. So and I was surprised. I was like, how in the world are you doing this? And it all came down to their choices of what they bought and what they didn't own, what they decided not to live in, what everything came down to that. So I don't think you can have the excuse that I don't make enough money. Not if you're willing to work.
Love it. How about insurances? Where do they play in this, or do they not play in this? Things like life insurance and whatnot.
Well, again, it comes down to me, life insurance is a personal choice. I think, though, it's a very easy way to take care of the unknown scenario, especially if you've got children, especially if you've got someone that's dependent on you. I think having life insurance is a very easy way to solve the problem, and it's usually very, very cheap. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they bought a $2 million life insurance policy for their daughter. And their daughter's like, I don't know what, 22, 23 years old. And you don't normally need that much, but she did it as a gift. $2 million, I think, is $5,000 a year. That's a very cheap way to deal with that. And that was permanent insurance, by the way. That was not term. She could have bought a $2 million term policy for probably $30 a month.
Wow.
At 20. So I think if you've got children, you got somebody dependent on you, or you've got debt that you need to make sure is covered, it's an easy way to do it if you can qualify.
Okay. So let's say we are just starting out. We are just starting our business, just starting our brand, just starting to enter the work world, whatever it happens to be. What is the one thing that we absolutely should be starting to do right now?
I think, we think about a business plan for our business. I think you need to have a personal plan for yourself. So when you look at the business, again, I think don't fool yourself saying, I'm going to take all of everything and put it back in the business. Operate the business with the mentality of it needs to pay you, just like you would pay an employee. It needs to pay you. Now, there may be some downtime there that you're willing to sacrifice, but you kind of got to set some goals and say, okay, well, I think by whatever time frame that is. If you've got it in a plan, it's a plan. If you're shooting from the hip, it's not. But let's just say that you said, hey, you know what? I think I can make this business profitable in X number of years. I don't care what X is. Let's say 5 years. By 5 years, it needs to support me. It needs to be, it needs to be profitable and handle all of these different things. So that's my goal. So I'm going to give it 5 years. But that at the 4th or 5th year, that includes you being able to have enough income to save. That needs to be a part of the plan, because otherwise you're just going to get down 5 years and go, well, I don't know what happened to all the money. I don't know what happened to everything. So I think you need to have a very specific business plan as well as a personal plan. The personal plan saying, I got to be able to make money doing this, or otherwise it's an expensive hobby. It's not a business.
And we touched on several different things here, but I know that you go into more depth and also the breadth of what you discuss on your podcast. So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So the podcast, we actually talk from 3 different sides. We talk financial, which is, all things financial. We also talk about legacy, because a lot of people are concerned about what they leave behind, how they leave it behind. So we talk about that. And then the third area is lifestyle. So, and a lot of that is around this idea that sometimes people get to retirement and quite honestly don't know what they're going to do in retirement. So lifestyle is kind of like, what do I want to do in retirement? What are my goals? And that might be that I want to volunteer. That might be that I want to work part-time. That might be that I want to be, a consultant, whatever that might, or it might be I want to travel the world. I don't care what that is. But again, I also, just like you would have a personal plan or a business plan, you need to have a retirement plan that says, what am I going to do when I retire? We have a lot of people who retire in the first year, they say, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, because they try to do everything that they know that they were behind on. Year 2 or 3, they go, I am bored out my mind, because they don't have anything to do. They don't know what to do. And so they go, I got to come up with something to do. And there's only so much golf. There's only so much things you can do that, unless you really want to be, a daily golfer and go into the senior tour or something. I mean, you just, the idea is, what am I going to do? And I need to have a plan. I think a written plan that says, this is what I'm going to do. Here's my goals for retirement. And that goal could be anything. It could be, I have a goal that twice a year, I'm going to go visit the grandkids. I'm going to do this project. I'm going to do this volunteer thing. I'm going to do whatever it might be and have it written out. Because otherwise you're just going to go 10 years into retirement and go, what did I do? What did I spend the last 10 years doing?
What have been a couple of your favorite episodes so far?
I would say there's been a couple. There's actually one that just came out. This is and it's just top of mind right now. It's a guy out of Germany actually that talked about this idea, especially, and this is it fits this topic really well for somebody building a business, how to be able to communicate with your partner, your spouse, or whatever it might be about the disconnect that can occur if you've got in a relationship a driver and then somebody's supporting the driver, and how that disconnect can occur. And you might get down the road and the person who is supporting feels, in all essence, disconnected or not a part of the team. And the person over here was just driving so hard, trying to grow their business and trying to do all that. They didn't realize what they were doing in that relationship. And so he basically has a program that talks about how to communicate, how to have how to work together, although you've got one that's driving the company, maybe one that's supporting, whatever that might be. And I thought, man, that really hit home for me, because I know I went through a process growing my business where that focus was so much about that consumed my brain, and I probably didn't do a good enough job communicating. And so that, I think that's really big, especially for a small business owner.
Do you happen to know the name of it or the episode number by any chance?
I know the guy's name is Uwe Dockhorn. I told you he's from Germany. But it's the one that just came out, and I can tell you in just a second here. Yeah, it was, I mean, he has a whole program around this, and it's for, solopreneurs, professionals, anybody who's in a scenario where they're driving in one place. So it's episode 83, Perfect. Liberating Your Life for Retirement.
Love it.
And that was a really good episode.
Excellent. So with that, Radon, I just have 4 final questions for you.
Okay.
First one is, what's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
I think to live a balanced life. Don't, make sure that you don't just put all of your resources into one area. You got to have balance. And I'll tell you, there's a book called The Present, The Present, as if being in the present. And that was a very powerful book, because it basically talked about, this idea that when you're at work, if you do things and you're balanced, you can be at work and be at work. Most of us, though, are at work guilty that we didn't spend enough time with our family. And then we're with our family and we're thinking about work. And so it was this concept of, hey, if you have a balanced life and you have things scheduled out, you can be at work and be at work. You're not guilty for not being with the family. And then when you're with your family, you can be with your family. You can be present. You're not in this scenario where you're thinking about work, if you kind of balance that out. So to me, that was huge. And that happened at around year 10 in my business. And it really changed my mentality of, okay, I gotta get this together and be balanced in my approach.
What's one thing on your bucket list?
Big time, I would love to go to South Africa and Australia. So both of those spots are pretty equal for me, and it all depends upon how I can travel and what the travel requirements are for me to go there. But those are pretty big.
When the toy companies finally get around to making an action figure of you, what 2 accessories will it come with?
Hair. You gotta have hair piece, because I don't have hair. And a planner, a day planner.
Love it. And the last thing, Radon, how do people find you?
The easiest place is to go to our website, which is pomwealth.net. I always direct people to our blog page, because we have tons of articles there. There's a new article coming out every single week, and it just gives you a lot of information around all these different topics that we talk about.
And I have to say, if you haven't listened to Secure Your Retirement podcast, give that a listen too.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Please comment, like, or share this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more information on how I can help you create your iconic image, visit marlanasemenza.com.